your host, Stacie Schlichtenmyer. Stacie, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you, Balin?
Not too bad. You were very involved. I want to mention this at the top. You were very involved with the Lake City Skiers, and Sunday, pretty cool Father's Day opportunity, sounds like, right? And you're gonna
Yes,
be involved.
absolutely. Yes, so Sunday is our Lake City Skier show. We do have a show every Sunday and Tuesday. So there's a pre-show. It starts at 5:45, and we are offering, Lake City Real Estate is offering a free meal to all the dads. So go to concessions and tell them, hey, I'm here for the free meal, sponsored by Lake City Real Estate, or I'm here for the free food, and come out and enjoy the free show. We're looking forward to it.
Tell them Stacie sent you. That's super cool. I wanted to get that at the top of the show because I'm excited about that.
Yeah,
She told
come
me
on
about
out.
that before we start. So we're going to be there on Sunday on Father's Day, and it should be a good time. Stacie, last time we talked, we were kind of just doing a general market update, looking around the area, what you're seeing, inventory, things like that. Now we're going to start to focus in a little bit more on a specific, sector of your portfolio and your wealth of knowledge, and that is the lake buying and selling process. But in order to understand that, it is so different than just buying a home wherever you might be looking to buy a home.
Sure.
There are so many things you don't know, things you need to learn to really get the best out of your lake buying experience and not be surprised by anything along the process. So we're in the very early stages of this conversation. We'll talk about this over the next couple of episodes probably. But I'll let you kind of take it, Stacie, and just where do we want to start when it comes to, okay, I've decided I'm going to look about maybe acquiring some land to build a home on a lake, or buy a lake home off of somebody and then do whatever you'd like to do with that.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say, first of all, congratulations. That's awesome. How exciting.
Yeah.
And what makes you want a lake home? Right? Figuring out where your buyer is at. You kind of talk that for some people, just being able to see the water is enough. Other people don't care about the water, like seeing the water at all. They want access to be able to ski, for example. So finding out what's important, that's kind of, reiterating over and over, finding out what your buyer's goals are. Because also knowing the area and knowing the lakes, I'm able to give those recommendations. So when someone comes in and they're like, oh, we're looking for a lake home and we have young kids and, we are pretty involved and active in our community. And my mind's like, Chapman Lake, that's where you need to be. Because there's no one that does family activities like Chapman Lake and their entire area. They do all sorts of different things. Their fireworks, they do a turkey trot, they do all sorts of things. So just being able to have that knowledge and then to help guide any potential buyers as far as what they're looking for.
So that's always the first step, and that's very similar to buying a home in general. I think that's a very fair conversation to have. But what should you be alert about, or what should you really be paying attention to when you're starting this process? Because there are things, like we said, that you don't necessarily have to know, or maybe you didn't pick up when you bought your first home, second, third home, wherever that may be. So you kind of decided, here's where I want to be, but what are some things along that process, or maybe some newer things in the process that the buyer needs to be aware of?
Right. So when you are looking at a lake home, absolutely checking, does that property give you access? Okay. So if it's on a channel or on the lake, obviously, yes, the idea is that you have access, but you want to check that. I know when we bought our house on Pike Lake, we looked out the back and we're like, wow, this is huge. We thought we had 300 feet of channel frontage. And then we looked at the property lines and we had a very educated real estate agent who was like, hey, just check this out. We had 22 feet, which again, at the end of the day was fine for us. We just want to be able to put a boat in and we get to enjoy that 300, feet of frontage, the view. But that also kind of makes me think of the next, let's say, issue, or just something to think of when you are purchasing. So many people like that view, and that view is really, really important. And obviously, that's why a lot of lake homes are stacked so closely. In Indiana, you don't have a right to an unobstructed view of a lake. And I think that's very important because one thing we know is that things are always changing. So it's something to be aware of.
So I guess, and this might be kind of hard to find an example, but you don't have the right to an unobstructed view. Does that mean someone could put a boat in the middle of the channel or something like that, and it's just blocking up what you would see behind, and there's nothing you can do about it? I guess I'm not sure. a neighbor could do something like that. It's a tree, who knows?
Like what
there
that
are
looks
those things.
like. Yeah, often what's happening around the lakes is that so sewer districts have come in, and which is fantastic because we have cleaner water now because of that, and that increases property values, and it's a wonderful thing all around. But what that does then is it allows newer, bigger homes to be built. And so when that happens, right, maybe you have a little fishing cottage that was in front of you down a hill or something like that, and now it's going to be rebuilt into a 2 or 3 story home. And so those are definitely things, I mean, obviously we can't control those types of things. So just to be aware that just because you have that beautiful view now doesn't mean you always will. So maybe to look at things a little bit differently.
I'm going to try to compare it to this. You are the first home to go into a subdivision, and you look around and there's nothing around you, but then those homes fill up.
Sure.
Kind of the similar feeling to that. When there's a home in front of you, I think it's a really good example what you used. You know, you've got that old cottage gets bought out, land gets pushed, or that home gets pushed away, big old mansion comes up right in front of you, and that's a property value issue because that view was probably a really great view,
right?
And a part of that property value. So this is, I don't want to say the word investment because I want people to understand when you're buying a lake home, you're buying it for a reason, probably relaxation in most cases. You like to be on the boat, you like to be on the water, but down the line it does kind of turn into that investment, and you have to have that 10, 15, 20-year view sometimes of like, hey, could this happen, could this not happen? So I think that's a fair point to bring up. Another thing is easement, and I still do not understand easement. I don't understand it. I've heard the term a million times. I rented a home on a lake on Tippy for a little while, was familiar with easement. There were some easements in front of us, but what does that all mean?
All right, well, first I want to start by saying I am not a lawyer. So an easement is essentially like, it's borrowed. It's if you think about it, you don't own it. It's borrowed ownership. It's borrowed rights. And what we know about things that are borrowed, they can always be taken back. So it's something to be very mindful of. Generally, we see this around the lakes where there are several lake cottages and then there'll be an area of easement so people can have access. So maybe those homes don't have direct frontage, but then there's easement access in front of someone else's house or off to the side. And so then again, knowing what your property rights are and knowing how that conveys, because just because you do then have access to an easement doesn't necessarily mean you have pure rights. So there's just so many things that you don't know. And until you start asking questions, and this is a really good time when you are working potentially to secure a lake property, where a real estate attorney is a really, really good person to have as a resource.
And to have you in our corner as well to make sure that you can, flush all that out, right, when you're looking at a property. Because I'm not saying this happens, but in my mind, I'm looking at a listing. It's beautiful. It's on a lake, lakefront access or pier access or whatever. Do they have to disclose that it's an easement? Is there some disclosure there? Probably some good faith, of course. But I'm sure you see listings or homes sometimes that are advertised one way, but maybe you read into it and baked in there is this is an easement. That's how you have access to a dock or a pier.
Absolutely, yes. So obviously, I'm always giving everyone the benefit of the doubt that the information that's published is real and true as they know. But one thing we know about information, right, is that it can be inaccurate. And so you can do your due diligence and do your best job and still not have the correct information or have updated information because things change. And so, I mean, when you're dealing with properties that have been split and there's different things that have been sold off, everything's up in the air.
And that's pretty common at this point, right? Around our lakes, you see
one
parcel of land that was somebody's a long, long time ago, and that's been sold, divided, and maybe there's 2 or 3 cottages on that. That's probably a pretty common situation around here.
Yeah, there is not a ton of undeveloped land around our lakes. With that, there is, but a lot of it's protected, and for good reason. And so, yes, the land that's there, just like anywhere, is finite. And so that's why it's generally always a good investment to buy dirt.
It's been chopped up, and you got to be careful sometimes of what you're buying or where you're buying it. The next thing is kind of talking about your pier, the seawall, the road, all of that access, because that is the next step. You want to put a boat in. Do you want to have pretty free and clear access? do you want your home to flood? I don't,
Right.
you don't want it to,
Sure,
but like,
no, all
you
of those
have to
things
think about
matter.
that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to put on my water conservation hat for a minute here, and we're going to kind of get nerdy because I get really excited about this. Being on the board of the Watershed Foundation, I've learned a ton about essentially erosion, how we keep our lakes clean, how we keep sediment out of our lakes, and a lot of that has to do with a natural, healthy seawall. And I'm actually in the process right now, we are restoring our seawall. We've had this cement seawall forever around Pike Lake. That's the way it was back in the day. We didn't know any different. And so now, obviously, after years, ours is pretty broken down and pretty dilapidated. And so our shoreline is starting to erode. And I mean, that's our property, right? It's going right into the channel, which is essentially going right into the Tippy River, and it's flowing all downstream. And so, for one, we are at the headwaters of our watershed and of the Tippy River. And so it's our job, right? Like, we're the stewards. Yeah. So if we don't care here, how do we expect anyone downstream to care? And in addition to that, all of those things that we're doing as far as like, redoing a seawall, that's going to help our property values. Mm-hmm. So having the natural shoreline and not such abrupt end to the seawall allows less energy when your boat is coming through, basically to bring up all that sediment from the bottom. And so in addition to that, when you have runoff and rain and whatever else is going into our lake, it's able to drain better that way. And so that's another reason why like incorporating native plants is helpful. Those root systems are really deep, but having all of those rocks there, and also you're able to put native plants in there. It's great for the environment. It's also great for water fowl. Like, it's just all around a good thing to do. And what it does is it initiates more change on your lake. And so our neighbors across the channel redid their seawall several years ago. And then having minimal knowledge of that and then getting on the board of the Watershed Foundation. And it's like, well, now we know better, so we need to do better. And that includes, right, like maintaining our own seawall. And a lot of different things, even, cleaning up your pets, poop, like not feeding waterfowl, using phosphorus-free fertilizer. All of those things help to keep our water clean, which in turn increases our property values. So it's a win-win.
You don't want any of the, I know the algae, like growing can be affected by certain things running off.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The way things look. Okay, so you mentioned it was concrete or cement, the original seawall.
Yeah.
What is like the current day process for a natural seawall or a healthy seawall? You may have mentioned a little bit about it, but is it really just the rock? And those
a lot of times.
Like that?
The machine. There's different companies locally that they do a lot of these seawalls, and so you're able to call them up. There's also grants that are available, and so that's again, if you take a look at the Watershed Foundation, they do partner with other resources, and they have some grant funding available if you're looking to do that. So, I apologize. What did you say?
I was just about to say, this is why you use Stacie. Yeah. If you're, seriously though, like if you're about to buy a lake home and your seawall is torn to bits and it's not good and you want to be able to protect it, you just added value because you're on that Watershed Foundation and there's grants available. Not saying you're guaranteed to get that grant.
Sure,
but you make this investment, you make this purchase, probably going to be a rather expensive one, knowing the values of lake homes and the land around here. That information is really good to have, and without you, they wouldn't be. I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, so that's true.
I think that's a really great asset.
Well, thank you. Yes, I love to geek out about water, and anything we can do to educate more people so they're aware. Because I think so often we take our clean lakes for granted. If you've lived here your whole life, you don't realize. I travel a lot for work, and I talk to a lot of people in a lot of other areas of the country. And they don't have access to water like we do. They don't have access to a beach without paying for it. And I just had a friend that flew across country for a wedding, and they went to a lake where they paid like $12 to go, and he's like, it was a mud hole, right? We just don't know what we have unless you've been elsewhere. So all of the things that we can do to keep our lakes clean, it's good for generations.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to buying a lake property. We're going to talk more and more about what that is and probably get into the selling process as well down the line. But Stacie, before we go, how can people find you? How can they talk to you so they can get this knowledge?
Sure. You can give me a call or text on my cell phone. My number is 574-334-7105. You can also shoot me an email at Lake City Stacie. That's Lake City Stacie, Stacie, @kw.com. or you can come and visit us downtown 212 South Buffalo Street in Warsaw.
Awesome. That's Stacie Schlichtenmyer. Stacie, I will see you on Sunday. Come on out to the Lake City Skiers there. And yeah, what a fun, it's a very summery episode.
Yeah,
When you
right?
come at the lake and
Yes.
the water and all the fun things like that. So we really appreciate that. That's Stacie Schlichtenmyer. I'm Balin Height. Have a great rest of your weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you next week.